No one reacted when it happened. That's what made it unsettling. Not the pause itself. Not the music continuing like nothing was wrong. Not even the way she held her smile, steady and practiced. It was the silence around it. A room full of people choosing, all at once, to pretend nothing had shifted. Because sometimes, the most powerful moments are the ones nobody wants to acknowledge. She stood there under the lights, a woman who had spent a lifetime commanding attention without asking for it. Decades of presence. Decades of voice. The kind that doesn't just sing, it carries memories. Yours, mine, everyone's. And yet, for just a second, something didn't align. A pause that didn't belong. The band kept going. The audience kept watching. And she remained still for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then applause. Warm. Loud. Almost relieved. As if everyone silently agreed. We didn't see anything. But something was there. And maybe you felt it before, not on a stage, but somewhere quieter. A sentence that doesn't quite finish. A thought that slips away before it forms. A memory that arrives, incomplete. You don't panic. You don't even react. You just keep going. That's how it begins. Not with something breaking, but with something small, interrupting. And here's the part that makes it difficult. Inside, you still feel exactly the same. Now think about her. Not as a legend. Not as a voice. As a person. A woman who lived through eras that no longer exist. Who watched the world change over and over, while people expected her to remain exactly as they remembered. Do you know what that does to someone? Because when people look at her, they're not just seeing who she is. They're seeing who she was. Their memories. Their past. Their version of her. And without realizing it, they expect her to carry all of it. Every night. That kind of weight doesn't look heavy. But it is. And over time, it changes something. Not loudly. Quietly. Because the truth is, moments like that pause don't appear out of nowhere. They build. Slowly. Over years. Sometimes decades. Long before anyone asks questions. Long before anyone notices. And by the time they do, it's already been there. So maybe the real question isn't what happened in that moment. Maybe it's this. When did it actually begin? Because it didn't start on that stage. It started much earlier. At a time when everything looked perfect. Her voice was everywhere. Not just popular, unavoidable. Songs that didn't just play, they stayed. They became part of people's lives. And from the outside, it looked effortless. But success like that has a cost. Because when the world decides who you are, it becomes very difficult to change. Imagine waking up every day knowing millions of people expect you to sound like a version of yourself that no longer exists. And still you deliver. Night after night. Year after year. But behind that consistency, something begins to shift. Not dramatically. Quietly. Relationships evolve. Control becomes complicated. The system that once supported you starts to feel different. Less like freedom, more like structure. And when that structure weakens, it doesn't collapse all at once. It fades. Opportunities change. Trends move on. New voices rise. And suddenly, what once felt permanent starts to feel fragile. But she didn't stop. That's important. She kept going. Adapting. Reinventing. From the outside, it looked like strength. But sometimes, continuing isn't strength. Sometimes it's survival. And survival carries a different kind of weight. Because now you're not just moving forward. You're holding everything together while parts of it are already slipping. Have you ever felt that? Like something inside you has changed, but the world hasn't noticed yet? Because that's where her story deepens. Not at the height. Not at the fall. But in that space in between, where everything looks fine, and yet something underneath has already shifted. And then, one day, reality becomes impossible to ignore. Not in a dramatic way. In a quiet one. A number appears. A loss. Not just financial, structural. Something that was supposed to be stable, suddenly isn't. And here's what makes it heavier. She didn't disappear. She didn't collapse. She kept showing up. Standing on stage. Being introduced the same way. Smiling the same way. While behind the scenes, things were no longer what they seemed. That creates a very specific kind of tension. Because now, you're not just carrying your legacy. You're protecting it. And that changes how you move. How you speak. How you pause. Everything becomes a little more careful. A little more controlled. Not fake, just measured. And over time, that control becomes part of you. If this story is resonating with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Because sometimes, the quietest struggles are the most familiar ones. But life doesn't stop adding weight. There are losses that don't fade when they happen. They stay. And when you lose someone close, not in the public sense, but personally, something shifts in a way the world can't fully understand. Because your grief doesn't belong only to you anymore. It becomes something people talk about, analyze, reduce. And suddenly, you're not just feeling loss. You're managing how that loss is seen. That creates distance between what you feel and what you show. And that distance, it doesn't disappear. It shows up in small ways. In tone, in presence, in silence. And maybe, in moments like that pause. Not confusion, not weakness. Wait, the kind you can't see. The kind that doesn't announce itself. Now add something else to that. Time. Because there comes a point where time stops being something abstract. You don't measure it in years anymore. You feel it in moments. Things that once felt automatic now require attention. Things that once felt effortless now feel intentional. Not worse, just different. And when you notice that, you can't unnotice it. So you adjust. Quietly. You become more aware, more deliberate. Even your silence becomes a choice. And maybe that's what people are seeing now. Not decline, not loss, but transformation. A shift from performance to presence. Because at some point, the voice isn't the only thing people hear anymore. They feel something deeper. And that matters. But here's the question no one asks. When the thing that defined you begins to change, who are you without needing it to stay the same? And more importantly, can the world accept that version of you? Because the truth is, people don't come to see who you are now. They come to remember who you were. And living inside that expectation, for years, changes something. You start choosing what to show, what to keep. You speak less. You observe more. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned not everything needs to be explained. And maybe that's what those pauses really are. Not emptiness, not hesitation, but moments that are full of memory, full of awareness, full of a life that no longer needs to prove anything. So when that silence happens on stage, maybe it isn't something going wrong. Maybe it's something being felt, completely, fully, before it passes. Because in the end, her story isn't about a single moment. It's about something much quieter. The space between who the world remembers and who she continues to become. And maybe that's not just her story. Maybe it's all of ours. Because one day, people will remember a version of you that no longer fully exists. And you'll still be here, changing, growing, becoming someone they haven't met yet. So the question isn't how to stop that from happening. The question is, can you be at peace with it? If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might see themselves in it. Because sometimes, the most important stories are the ones we don't immediately understand. They're the ones we feel long after the silence.